Good evening. Would you all please stand with me as we worship together? When the music fades, all is stripped away, and I simply come, longing just to bring something that's a word that'll bless your heart. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things appear. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made it, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. King of endless worth, no one could express how much you deserve. And though I'm weak and poor, all I have is yours, every single breath. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, through the way things appear. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing Shake up the ground of all my traditions. Break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Your way is better. Shake up the ground of all my traditions. Break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Your way is better. Shake up the ground of all my traditions. Break down the walls of all my religion. Your way is better. Your way is better. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. And I will make room for you to do whatever you want to do whatever you want to. Here is where I lay it down. You are all I'm chasing now. This is my surrender. Here is where I lay it down. You are all I'm chasing now. This is my surrender.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. That grace had brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we'd first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now but now I see.
All right, go ahead and turn around and say hi to someone.
Well, thank you.
Good evening. It's packed house tonight. Oh, I'm a little boomy. Woo! All right. We'll work through that one way or the other. All right. Well, let me get started tonight. How's everybody doing tonight? Good? Oh, good. Me too. Hopefully. By the end of the night, we'll see. Anyway, so some quick announcements real quick. Next Friday, so not this upcoming Friday, next Friday we have youth group game night. So I know I have one youth group parents set here with my wife and myself also. Anyway, come to youth group game night. We're going to be playing on the big screen. We hope to do some fun games like Mario Party, maybe some Bible trivia feud, like Family Feud style. But that is Friday, May 8th from 6 to 9 p.m. So please sign up online. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or Jordan. Moving on down, we have Welcome to Calvary lunch, which is Sunday, May 17th. So if you're new to Calvary, feel free to come on by. We'd love to get to know you a little bit more. You can learn a little bit more about church and Denver Calvary itself. Talk to Pastor Louie, meet some of the leadership. And so there is a sign up, I think, just so we can know how much food to bring. And that is, again, May 17th, right after church, I think. We'll probably start around 1:30 or so. Men's retreat, so we're joining Calvary Aurora on May 22nd through the 24th. I saw an email just the other day that there's only 40 spots left. That was like 2 days ago, so it's probably less than that. But if you would like to join, visit the QR code up there. The cost is $210 to $280 per person, depending on room arrangements. And it's a great time to just get up to the mountains, be with fellow men, fellow believers, dive into God's Word, get away from the busyness of this world, and seek the Lord. If you have questions about that, you can talk to Pastor Louie or go to Calvary Church or calvarychurchco.church. That's Calvary Aurora's website. So, Rainforest Falls VBS. In like 2 months, we're going to transform this place into a jungle. And so we got VBS. So if you have any friends, any neighbors, children, grandchildren who are from the ages of whatever it says on the screen, 4 years old to 6th grade, sign them up. It's a free event. It's an outreach that we do every year. We really put a lot of fun and effort into it. And this year, we got cool new technology. We've got fog machines, smoke machines. So we're going to bring those out, I know, which is cool. We have air conditioning this year, which is a big bonus. So on that, we need volunteers too. So it's a really good time to come out, spend, I think, is it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Heather? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, thank you. But it's only like from 9 to noon, so volunteers show up around 8. But it's a really good time to serve the children, seek the Lord, serve the Lord as well. And the more volunteers we get, the funner we have. So Women's retreat, August 14th through the 16th. Mark your calendars, lady. We have a women's retreat that is, the registration opens May 24th. Cost is $260 to $280 per person, depending on room arrangements. And again, it's a good time. Sign up, get away from your day-to-day life, get up to the mountains, seek the Lord, be with other women, and it's a really good time. Youth group calendar, we put out the latest youth group calendar this last weekend. So we have our whole year events on there, so you can mark it, make sure that it's part of your summer schedule, as well as, include your friends, invite your friends. That's what we always strive for. And then church prayer, so continue to pray for Pastor Louis and team. As you can tell, he's not here. I don't look anything like him. And so they're down in Chihuahua, Mexico right now on a missions trip. Tonight is their last night. Full day there. They fly back tomorrow. From what I've heard, it's been a very blessed time, just serving the people of the Tatamata, as well as serving alongside the Lightshine staff. So just pray that they have safe travels tomorrow, and that the Lord continues to use that mission down there to serve the people of Chihuahua. Mother's Day, May 10th, is like in a week and a half. So men, call your moms, do something more. And let's see. Oh, and I forgot to say this on Sunday, because I'm really a bad announcer, but there's a summer schedule for the women's ministry that was on the back of this. So they have some really cool new things. They have a couple gather and grow events that they're going to be hosting here at church. It's going to be a light dinner, as well as just conversation, fellowship, and a small message of encouragement. So anyway, that's not what you're here for. Hopefully not. Otherwise, it's going to get a lot more boring. So the last time I was up here, we went through the book of Judges, chapters 13 and 14. We were talking about Samson and telling his story. And so we're going to continue that. I went long last time. I apologize. I don't think I'll go long this time, but you know what? This is the Lord's message, not mine. So good luck. So let's do a little bit of overview real quick. So let's just do a quick minute to remember where we've been. So it started in Judges 13, and in Judges 13, or throughout the whole book of Judges, we find a familiar pattern for Israel. And so the people of Israel, they do evil in the sight of the Lord. God then allows Israel to fall under oppression, and then there tends to be, or there comes somebody who brings them out of the oppression. They cry out to the Lord for somebody to save them, and God raises somebody up. And this time, under the Philistines, this is no different. However, this cycle of sin, oppression, crying out, and deliverance is slightly different in that God raises somebody up without actually Israel crying out. God takes the initiative here, and he raises up a deliverer before the people even need to ask. So we're introduced first, and again, I'll try and be brief here, but the backstory does play a lot into what we're going to cover tonight. So we're introduced to Manoah and his wife. So these are just ordinary people. They're dealing with something difficult. That difficult something is that she is barren. She can't have children. And God steps in and does only what he can do. He provides a miracle, and the angel of the Lord appears to her, and promises a son. And this son would be set apart from birth, in that he would be a Nazirite. And a Nazirite is a vow that someone can take. It requires dedication. It requires following a prescriptive life, one of which is they can't be around death. They have to eat clean, no being around wine or grapes or anything of the vine. And they don't have to cut their hair, which wouldn't be a problem for me. But, so from the very beginning, Samson's life had a calling. He was set apart, and he was chosen and empowered by God. But we're also introduced that when somebody is called, when there's a calling in somebody's life, there's a responsibility in that life as well. We move into chapter 14, and Samson finally has grown up, and we get to meet him. And almost immediately, we see that tension between Samson's calling and his choices, and they tend to be at odds. So instead of working in obedience, Samson begins to follow his eyes and his desire. He goes down to Timnah, which is a Philistine city, and pursues a Philistine woman. Now, the Philistines, again, they are the oppressors of Israel. They're a pagan nation. They are against God. They worship a god named Dagon. But he follows his eyes, follows his desires, and finds a woman that he wants, and tells his parents, "Go get her for me." And the parents push back some, and his response to his father is, "Get her for me, for she pleases me well." I'm glad I haven't heard that from my kids yet. So that becomes this theme in Samson's life, doing what feels right in the moment rather than doing what honors God. And even in that disobedience, we still see something encouraging, that even if Samson strays from God's path, God still uses him regardless. And so, even though Samson had flawed decisions, God used those decisions to move against the people of Philistine, to move against the Philistines. And he had a plan for Samson from the beginning to the end. And so we also saw a glimpse of God's strength, which was Samson's strength, right? When the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, when they were going down to Timnah, he was interrupted by a lion, and he tore this lion in pieces with his bare hands. And that was not Samson's power, that was the Spirit of the Lord coming upon him. And so every victory, every act of power, all traces back to God, not Samson. And that's, again, an important theme that we want to follow as we move forward. And kind of fast forward a little bit, we get to the wedding. There's a wedding feast, and that's really where things start to unravel. Now, this was a pagan wedding, and so there were some traditions that were not Jewish traditions, were not traditions of Samson's family, but they followed them nonetheless. And one of those was they wanted, the groom was to give his groomsmen a gift, right? Like a wedding, a favor of some sort. Well, Samson was seemingly pretty petty, and so he didn't want to give this Philistines, he didn't want to, despite his desire for a Philistine woman, he didn't like the Philistines. And so he didn't want to do this. So instead he contrives this plan. Well, I'm going to put a riddle out there. I'm going to say, well, you know what? I will give you much. I will give you pairs of clothes and things and this great gift, but you have to solve my riddle. And this riddle he comes up with is interesting, and it's out of the, let me see if I can find it here real quick, but it's, let me see. I'll get to it. But it's a riddle, and I'm sorry, I should be a little more. Verse 14, yeah. Can you read it for me?
Sure. So he said to them, out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet.
Yes, so out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. I don't know if you know riddles. I don't know riddles very well, but who would be able to guess that? Anyway, turns into something. They're like, these groomsmen come against the bride and say, hey, how dare you do that? You're making a fool of us. She goes and nags Samson, and eventually he tells his bride what the answer is, and she betrays him because she's afraid for her life. They come against her, say, we're going to kill you unless you find out the riddle, and they answer his riddle just in time, and Samson pays back his debt, or pays what is due, but again, he's somewhat petty, and so it doesn't come out of his pockets. He goes down to a Philistine camp and kills 30 men, steals their clothes, and gives them as gifts. Sounds great. So that's where we left off. So Samson, a man called by God, empowered by the Spirit, but increasingly driven by his flesh. A man of incredible potential, but also very, very clear compromise. And so as we move to chapters 15 and 16, we're going to see that tension between Samson's strength, God's calling for him, and Samson's desire for doing what is right in his own eyes continue to build. So before we start in chapter 14, or chapter 15, I want to just start with the end of chapter 14. And chapter 14 ends with where we left off. He gave the gifts of the dead people's clothes, and he's just mad. And he kind of goes away. And verse 20 in chapter 14 says, "And Samson's wife was given to the friend who had attended him at his wedding." And so Samson, he falls for a Philistine, but ultimately because of his reaction, right, because of his actions of killing 30 Philistine men, his wife's given to his groomsmen. And like I said earlier, he was no fan of Philistines, despite his attraction for this Philistine woman. So let's go to chapter 15, verse 1, and let's start there. And it says, "Later on, at the time of the wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat and went to visit his wife. And he said, 'I'm going to visit my wife's room.' But her father would not let him go in. 'I was so sure you thoroughly hated her,' he said," that is his wife's father, "'that I gave her to your friend. Isn't her younger sister more attractive? Take her instead.'" So here, Samson finally is coming off of his tirade. He's like, "You know what? I haven't seen my wife yet. I'm going to go bring her a goat." If you were to ask Dwight Schrute, that would probably be a very good gift for your wife, if you're fans of The Office. So he goes, wooing her with a fine meal, right? He attempts to see his wife, but then the father steps in. And now, all of a sudden, for the first time, Samson's like, "Well, what do you mean? This is my wife. Why can't I see her? Why won't you let me in her room?" And the father's like, "You just killed 30 of us. Why? Like, you hate us. Why would you want to be with my daughter?" And he says, "Well, here, anyways, here's my other daughter. Isn't she fine? Like, take her." Well, how does Samson respond? So in verse 3, it says, "Samson said to him, 'This time I have a right to get even with the Philistines. I will really harm them.' So he went out and caught 300 foxes and tied them tail to tail in pairs. Then he fastened a torch to every pair of tails, lit the torches, and let the foxes loose across in the standing grain of the Philistines. He burned up the shocks and the standing grain, together with the vineyards and the olive gardens." So here, this is Samson's reaction, his first reaction. Like, he didn't go back and be like, "Yeah, I guess I can see, like, that's on, okay, I really liked your daughter. I can see how it come across like I don't want to marry her." No, instead of that, he's like, "You know what, I'm justified. I'm going scorched earth, like literal scorched earth." He grabs 300 foxes, I don't quite know why, ties 2 of the tails together, and I was like, well, why 2? And the more I thought about it, well, if you had 1 fox and you tied a torch to it, what would it do? Probably just sit down and gnaw on its tail and try and chew it off and escape. But when 2 of them, they're fighting each other, and they're trying to go their way, and the other one's trying to go the other way. And I mean, it had to be quite a sight, and a horrible sight, but quite a sight. And so he destroys all the Philistines' grain, all of their vineyards, all of their olive groves, because he didn't get the wife that he wanted. And so how did then the Philistines respond? Starting in verse 6, it says, "When the Philistines asked, 'Who did this?' they were told, 'Samson, the Timnite's son-in-law.' because his wife was given to his friend. So the Philistines went up and burned her and her father to death. So, I don't know if I explained it, but if you remember my teaching a little while ago when I went over 13 and 14, what was the thing that they threatened the bride with? If you go to Judges 14:15, it says, on the fourth day, they, the groomsmen, said to Samson's wife, coax your husbands into explaining the riddle for us, or we will burn you and your father's household to death. And what happened? They were burned to death. Not by the groomsmen, but by the Philistines. It's exactly what happened. Because of their deceit, because the bride betrayed Samson, ultimately they received the punishment that they were most afraid of, the thing that they chose to deceive Samson with. So the Philistines take their vengeance out, not at Samson, but his bride and those who caused Samson to lash out in the first place. So let that be a little bit of a lesson to us. So even when we feel like we've gotten away with something, when we feel, well maybe the ends justify the means, we must remember that there's consequences for our sin, for our rebellion. Whether it's the slow drifting away from the Lord, or even just the sharp punishment that can come from the fallout of our bad decisions, nothing is hidden from the sight of God. So Samson responded, the Philistines responded. Well, what's going to happen next? Well, that's verse 7. Samson said to them, well, since you've acted like this, I won't stop until I get my revenge on you. He attacked them viciously and slaughtered many of them. Then he went down and stayed in a cave in the rock of Edom. So again, Samson doesn't take the chance to step back. He doesn't take the chance to be like, well, hold on, what started this in the first place? No, he's like, well, you killed my bride. I'm going to take my punishment out on you. And so he slaughters many Philistines. Again, this all started because Samson made this prideful bet, and he ended up being a sore loser. The blood on his hands wasn't justified, even though God did allow it to be a punishment for the Philistines. So verse 9, it says, the Philistines went up and camped in Judah, spreading out near Lehi. And the men of Judah asked, why have you come to fight us? We have come to take Samson prisoner, they answered, to do him as he did to us. So this is growing, right? We're seeing this tension build and build, right? It was first, well, you lost your wife, and then it was, well, I'm going to burn your fields, and then it was, I'm going to kill your bride, and now it was, I just killed a bunch of Philistines, and now they pulled they've pulled Judah into it. They didn't do anything. They weren't part of this at all. This was just between Samson and the Philistines. So the Philistines are like, you know what? We're going to go to Judah. We're going to come against them. You know, if Samson's going to come against us because we went against his wife, well, we're going to go against them, his people. And so we see this tit-for-tat behavior continue. And all they ask is, well, why are you here? So how does Judah respond? Remember, these are Samson's people. Judah is no friend of the Philistines. They don't like him any more than Samson does. In verse 11, it says, then 3,000 men from Judah went down to the cave in the rock of Edom and said to Samson, don't you realize that the Philistines are rulers over us? What have you done to us? Let me pause there. See from Judah, from his own people, they're accusing Samson of betraying them. Again, they were just bystanders in all of this. And how does he respond? It says, he says, I merely did to them what they did to me. So here we see how everyone is justified in their own actions. They feel like they're justified in what they did. He just said, I just did to them what they did to me. And what did the Philistines say to Judah? Well, we just want to do to him what he did to us. And it's already turned into this never-ending cycle. However, instead of just staying between Samson and the Philistines, it's now pulled the nation of Judah into it as well. And their lives are now on the line because of Samson's actions. And how often do we do that in our lives? Somebody hurts us. Somebody breaks our confidence. And what's our initial response? To hurt them. To tell something that they've bestowed in confidence to us to somebody else. And oftentimes, it grows, and innocent bystanders are in harm's way. Now, if Judah felt this wasn't a big issue, why did they send 3,000 men to get Samson? He absolutely did something wrong. So moving on down to verse 12, it says, they said to him, we've come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines. Samson said, well, swear to me that you won't kill me yourselves. Agreed, they answered. We will only tie you up and hand you over to them. We will not kill you. So they bound him with 2 new ropes and led him up the rock. As he approached Lehi, the Philistines came toward him shouting. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon him in power. The ropes on his arms became like charred flax, and the bindings dropped from his hands. Finding a fresh jawbone of a donkey, he grabbed it and struck down 1,000 men. Then Samson said, with the donkey's jawbone, I have made a donkeys of them. With the donkey's jawbone, I have killed 1,000 men. When he finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone, and the place was called Ramath Lehi. So Judah decides our best course of action. Let's turn him in, right? We don't want to shelter Samson. This is between him and them. So they get him, and Samson is like, well, hold on. Promise me that you're not going to kill me. Interesting question. It makes you think, well, what if they said, well, I can't promise that? I don't know. I mean, he was like, are you guys going to betray me? But no. They said, no, we're not going to betray you. We're just turning you in. And Samson, he didn't want to receive judgment from his own people, but he was willing to receive judgment from the Philistines. He allowed himself to be delivered to the enemy. And through that, the Lord then uses this situation to showcase his power. Not Samson's power, his power. It says that great phrase, the Spirit of the Lord came upon him in power. And then Samson takes a jawbone of all things and kills 1,000 men. And this brings up one thing that I thought of is the thought of revenge, right? In Romans 12:19 it says, never take your own revenge, believer, but leave room for the wrath of God. Now in all of this, right, Samson has done damage to the Philistines. He's killed 30 men and then a multitude of men and now 1,000 men. But the great numbers have always been because of the Lord. That hasn't been because of Samson's strength. And we have to remember that God had a plan to use Samson for his divine purpose. If the Philistines' actions, right, of deceit, double-handedness, murder, that brought about Samson's and God's wrath upon them, if Samson's bride wouldn't have betrayed him, or if the Philistines had not killed his bride and her family, this probably would have turned out differently, a different story entirely. But God knew what was going to happen. God knew that Samson was going to have a flaw to be attracted towards his enemy's people. And he used that. He used the situations to showcase God's power and to place divine judgment against this evil people. And so previously, when Samson struck, it was his revenge, not God's revenge. And there was always consequences, right? It tended to escalate. It was a continued tit for tat, back and forth between Samson and the Philistines. However, here, there is something a little different. This time, Samson was empowered by the Holy Spirit, and this was a divine judgment. It wasn't just a few men. It wasn't 100 men. It was 1,000 men. A huge number. And when Samson was filled with God's power, he did great and mighty things. So moving on to the rest, we'll finish up chapter 15 here. So verse 18, it says, because he was very thirsty, he cried out to the Lord, you have given your servant great victory, but must I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? Then God opened up the hollow place in Lehi, and water came out of it. When Samson drank, his strength returned, and he revived. So the spring was called En-Hekor, and is still there in Lehi. Samson led Israel for 40 years. So after all of that, after this great empowerment by the Holy Spirit, what does Samson then think about? Him. He thinks about his morality. He thinks about, well, gosh, God, I'm spent. I just killed 1,000 men. Am I going to have to die now of thirst and succumb to the uncircumcised now? No, the Lord provided a miraculous spring for him to be revived. And after that, after 1,000 men are killed, we see things stop for a time. It said, Samson led Israel for 20 years. So moving to chapter 16. This is where we get closer, right? Everyone's like, well, it's the story of Samson and Delilah. Well, we haven't met Delilah just yet. Soon, very soon. So starting in verse 1, it says, one day Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute. He went in to spend the night with her, and the people of Gaza were told, Samson is here. So they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the city gate. They made no move during the night, saying, at dawn we'll kill him. But Samson lay there only until the middle of the night. Then he got up, and he took hold of the doors of the city gate, together with 2 posts, and tore them loose, bar and all. He lifted them to his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. So, again, the pattern continues. Samson, he's leading Israel this for 20 years, and now he ends up at a prostitute. He's a strong fellow, right? So he takes the city gate. Now think of a city gate, and if I was really thinking forward, I would have had shown the city gates of Jerusalem. But city gates aren't just like, a fence gate. It's, probably 10, 15 feet wide, just as tall. It was likely made of bronze, right? Because it's for protection. It's to be closed up at night so the enemy can't enter the city. And when they needed to, when they got surrounded, it provided protection. So Samson was strong enough that he not only took the gate, the doors, he took the posts, and he put them on his shoulders, and he carried it over 38 miles from Gaza to a hill near Hebron. 38 miles. He's strong. He's got power. He knows it, right? There's a sense of what I would say, it feels like arrogance in Samson. He knew, I'm not afraid of these people. But at the same time, he shows his weakness. He has a weakness for women. He has this weak moral compass that he goes to a prostitute for companionship. And so while his strength has allowed him to stay alive, what's going to happen when that strength is no more? So verse 4, it says, sometime later, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. Told you. She shows up eventually. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, See if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength and how we can overpower him so that we may tie him up and subdue him. Each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver." So Delilah, we're introduced. She's a Philistine. He likes those Philistine women. And immediately, the Philistine rulers pounce on an opportunity. They go to her and they say, you know what? Help us. Help us figure out a way to finally defeat Samson. And we're going to give you 1,100 shekels. Now, I think it's important to understand how much money this was. So 1,100 shekels for each ruler. We're not necessarily told how many rulers, but more than one. There's at least two. So 2,200 shekels. In chapter 17, we're introduced to Micah, and Micah talks to a Levite and says, if you stay with me, I will give you 10 shekels for a year for food and garments. So 10 shekels was enough for a single person to feed themselves and clothe themselves. So Delilah is given many, many times that, 2,200 at minimum, likely more than that. Let's just say it was an exorbitant amount of money that no Philistine could probably refuse. All they wanted, they just wanted to know, help us figure out how we can finally defeat this guy. Like, we can't afford to keep replacing these doors, you know? He just walks off with them. So, we're finally to the famous Samson and Delilah story. So in verse 6, let's go to verse 6. It says, "So Delilah said to Samson, 'Tell me the secret of your great strength and how you can be tied up and subdued.'" Well, first of all, I don't know about you, but if my spouse or my partner or girlfriend, whatever it was, said, "Hey, tell me how I can subdue you," right, and tie you up, I would probably be like, "What are you talking about?" Like, especially Samson, like he knows he's got a target on his back. But no, what does Samson say? He says, "Well, if anyone ties me up with 7 fresh thongs that have not been dried," 7 fresh thongs that have not been dried. A thong is like a strip of leather. "I'll become as weak as any other man." So then the rulers of the Philistines brought her 7 fresh thongs that had not been dried, and she tied him up with them. With men hidden in the room, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." And he snapped the thongs as easily as a piece of string snaps when it comes close to a flame. So the secret of his strength was not discovered. So there's attempt number 1. Delilah asks this question, like, "Hey, how can I subdue you?" Like, Samson, come on, use a little bit of reason here. Like, she's with the enemy. He doesn't seem to question his motivation, and I feel he probably is toying with her. He thinks he's in control. Well, hey, tie me up with some leather. That'll get it. Well, it doesn't. So verse 10. "So then Delilah said to Samson, 'Well, you have made a fool of me. You lied to me. Come now, tell me how you can be tied.' And so he says, 'Well, if anyone ties me securely with new ropes that have never been used, I'll become as weak as any other man.' So Delilah took new ropes and tied him with them, and then when the men hid in the room, she called to him, 'Samson, the Philistines are upon you.' But he snapped the ropes off his arms as if they were threads." Again, earlier in the story, his own people tied him up with ropes, like she should have known better, but it failed. Samson's strength wins again. That's what he's thinking. I'm strong, I'm invincible, I doesn't matter, like this is fun for him. So then, verse 13, Delilah then said to Samson, "Until now you have been making a fool of me and lying to me. Tell me how you can be tied." He replied, "If you weave the 7 braids of my head into the fabric of the loom and tighten it with the pin, I'll become as weak as any other man." So while he was sleeping, Delilah took the 7 braids of his head, wove them into the fabric, and tightened it with the pin. Again she called him, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He awoke from his sleep and pulled up the pin and the loom with the fabric. So strike 3. Samson again toys with Delilah, but this time it's a little different. There's a little bit of truth in what he said. He referenced his hair. Now, we'll get to that a little bit later. But again, she still failed to subdue Samson. Now, if I was the Philistine rulers, I'd probably been like, well, hey, 3 strikes, lady, you're out. Like, you're not going to get him. But listen carefully. Delilah doesn't give up. She carefully learns how to manipulate Samson. So Judges 16, verse 15 says, Then she said to him, How can you say I love you when you won't confide in me? This is the 3rd time you have made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your great strength. And with such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was tired to death. Now, if you remember from the last study in chapter 14, there was a similarity there with his bride. He toyed with her too about he wouldn't tell her the riddle. And finally, she nagged him enough that he gave in. Samson could not handle a persistent nagging. He couldn't handle it. So the enemy, through these women, used these failed attempts, never gave up to refine their method of attack against him. And in turn, we need to remember that the enemy will use every chance he has to learn and find our weakness. So verse 17, he told her everything. No, I have been a Nazirite, set apart to God since birth. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man. So why? He lets it all out. He tells her the truth, finally. But why? He did it because she persisted. The enemy never gave up, right? Delilah, she wanted that money. She wanted to become wealthy. She pursued this despite being made a fool time and time and time again. And then it says in verse 18, when Delilah saw that he had told her everything, she sent word to the rulers of the Philistines, "Come back once more. He has told me everything." So the rulers of the Philistine returned with the silver in their hands. Having put him to sleep on her lap, she called a man to shave off the 7 braids of his hair, and so began to subdue him. And his strength left him. Then she called, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." And remember, what was Delilah's motivation? She didn't care for or love Samson. It was for money. And this time she knew she had him. And Samson heard those words once more time that he heard 3 other times. This is the 4th time. "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." And what happens next, I feel, is one of the most tragic statements in the Old Testament. He awoke from his sleep and thought, I'll go out as before and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. So for the entirety of Samson's life, he relied on power, physical strength. Initially, he was aware that the power had come from the Lord, but day by day, year by year, he made decision after decision that eroded away his relationship with God. For him, it was never a question of, well, could I? He had the power, he had the muscle, he had the strength. Because it was God's power, God's strength. The Lord was with him despite all of that. But finally, Samson takes it too far and lets his enemy know why he was so special. It wasn't his hair. It was his calling that set him apart. And while Samson gave into and compromised on many parts of the Nazirite vow, his hair was one thing that he left untouched. But when he finally gave in and shared, and his hair was cut, his power was gone, and he didn't know it. How scary is that? Like, as a Christian, I'm. This should be like warning. Like, it would be devastating for me to hear or even feel that in my own life. To finally meet my Maker and him to open the door and said, Justin, I never knew you. So let us reflect on that. And while we live in God's grace, we should be careful not to abuse it. Not because God will turn our back on him, but maybe we never had a relationship with him in the first place. We should never rest on our laurels. We should always be pursuing the Lord day after day. So now, for the first time ever, Samson is apart from the Lord and at the mercy of his oppressors. And what do? Verse 21. Then the Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and took him down to Gaza, binding him with bronze shackles. They set him to the grinding in the prison, but the hair on his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. So these are ruthless people. They incapacitate him not only by binding him with bronze shackles, but they gouge out his eyes so he can't see anything. Then they put him on parade, take him down to Gaza, where he had just previously taken up the doorposts and the gates of Gaza and hauled him away. And now he is this defeated, deflated person, shell of a person. So I'll keep moving. So Judges 23:24 says, Now the rulers of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to celebrate, saying, Our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hands. And when the people saw him, they praised their God, saying, Our God has delivered our enemy into the hands, the one who laid waste to our land and multiplied our slain. And I think this is a great example about how our sin, our shortcomings, can lead and help Satan with his mission to continue to ensnare others. All of a sudden, the people of the Philistines, they are empowered. They're like, our God is awesome. He does great things. Look, we finally defeated Samson. But no, it wasn't that. It was because Samson had given things up. Samson had strayed so far away from the Lord that the Lord left him. It was because of Samson's actions, not because of their God. Their God had no power. And right, all too often, the enemy uses sin in God's church to grab hold and ensnare non-believers. So never let us think for a second that our sin will never be used against us or against other people. And I'll keep moving. So verse 25, it says, While they were in high spirits, they shouted, Bring out Samson to entertain us. So they called Samson out of the prison, and he performed for them. When they stood him among the pillars, Samson said to the servant who held his hand, Put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple, so that I may lean against them. Now the temple was crowded with men and women. All the rulers of the Philistines were there, and on the roof were about 3,000 men and women. So anybody who's anybody in the Philistines were there. And this is where God shows this Romans 8:28, which says, And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. God had a plan from the beginning. God knew Samson's heart. He knew his weakness. God knew that Samson would kill and trouble the Philistines out of hatred and pride. He knew that there was going to be this tit-for-tat response that escalated between them. And he knew that Samson would eventually cave to his desires and lose the power bestowed by God. But he also knew that Samson would be in this exact place, that he would be put there just for such a time as this, surrounded by thousands of Philistines, where God, through Samson, could strike one final blow. So then it says, verse 28, then Samson prayed to the Lord, O sovereign God, remember me. O God, please strengthen me just once more, and let me, with one blow, get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Then Samson reached toward the 2 central pillars on which the temple stood, pushed himself against them, his right hand on one and his left hand on the other. Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. Then he pushed with all his might, and down came the temple on the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than when he lived. Then his brothers and fathers' whole family went down to get him. They brought him back and buried him between Zara and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoah, his father. He had led Israel 20 years. So with Samson's last few words, he cries out to the Lord, and he realizes his purpose to strike down the Philistines. And with his last breath, he uses it to call out upon God to empower him to kill the Philistines. And we should be reminded in that God has a calling for each one of us. A calling isn't something that we get to pick. It's God's plan for you in your life. The only thing we have control over is, are we going to respond or not? And so even though we are all sinful and broken and in no way worthy to be used, God uses us, just like he used Samson. And he does that because he wants us to bring him glory. So will you pray with me? Father, we come before you humbled by what we've heard tonight. We remember that calling is real, but so is compromise. That sin doesn't stay small, it spreads, it costs, it affects more than we ever imagined. Lord, like Samson, we've all had moments where we've drifted, where we've relied on ourselves instead of you, where we get comfortable assuming you would always just show up in the same way. But tonight, we don't want to walk out here unchanged. God, remember us, not because we deserve it, but because you are gracious. Strengthen us, not so that we can lift ourselves up, but so that we can walk rightly before you. Restore what's been weakened. Refocus what's been distracted. Realign our hearts with your calling on our lives. And Lord, when there's been compromise, help us to not manage it, but surrender it. Do a work in us that goes beyond this moment. Something real, something lasting, something that brings you glory. We don't want to rely on our strength anymore. We want your Spirit to lead us, to guide us, to empower us. So have your way in us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Nails in your hands, nails in your feet, they tell me how much you love me. The thorns on your brow, they tell me how you bore so much shame to love me. And when the heavens pass away, all your stars will still remain, and forever guys have a good rest of your week.